Hi, welcome back to Mr. Slover's Math. Today we're going to focus on box and whisker plots. So you're going to be able to graph and interpret a box and whisker plot. So the first thing we need to do is to review how to find the range of something. So the range is your largest number minus your smallest number. Now that's easiest to find when your numbers are in numerical order. So if possible, put them in numerical order and then just take your largest, subtract your smallest. And then the other warm-up question is, what is the mean? Recall that is the average of something. So I add up all of those numbers and I divide by how many data points I have. So my sum was 210 and I'm going to divide by 12. So 210 divided by 12. And in that case, I get a decimal, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with getting decimals. So a box and whisker plot provides a picture of data ordered and divided into intervals. Each interval is 25% of the data. So if you look over here, and you see these different colors. The green is 25% of the data. The pink is 25% of the data. The blue is 25% of the data, and the yellow is 25% of the data. The max and the min form the whiskers. And this is most useful for when you have data with outliers. So the best time to use the box and whisker plot is if you have outliers. So a box and whisker plot uses 5 boundary points: the minimum and the maximum, the first quartile, the median, which is the second quartile, and then the third quartile. So example 1 is asking us to just look at this. We're not graphing it yet. Just look at this and determine what is going on. So it shows the age of employees working in a company. It may be difficult to see, but 26 and 50 are the ends of your whiskers. So 26 is your minimum and 50 is your maximum. So I just wanted to point that out because it is a little tough to see in the notes. So based on the box plot shown, circle the statements that correctly describe the age of the employees. So true or false. If it's false, we are fixing it. So this says the average age of employees in the company is 39. Well, this middle number right here is not the average. We're talking about the median. And let me backtrack a little bit up here where I said the first quartile, second quartile, and third quartile. Notice that here on the second quartile, I said the median. Okay, and we're actually going to see that again in our first quartile and the third quartile. We're going to be using the median 3 different times in order to graph our data. So let's keep that in mind when we look at this graph. So this right here is right in the middle of my data. So it's the median. So the median or the middle age is 39. The age of the oldest employee is 50. So oldest, I would look for my maximum. In this case, it is 50. So that's true. Half of the employees in the company are below the age of 38. Well, remember that highlighted part I had on the front side said each part is 25% of your data. So from 26 to 32, that's 25% of my data. From 32 to 39, that's another 25% of your data. So if I add this section and this section, that's 50% of my data, or 50% of the employees are between the age of 26 and 39. So that's why this one is false. The age of 50% of the employees in the company is 39 and above. Well, if from here to over here is 50%, and from here to here is the other 50%. So that is going to be true. And the age of 75% of the employees in the company is 42 and above. So here's 42 and above. That's false. That's just 25% of my data. So now we are going to graph this information. And so using the line below, create your box plot for the points scored by the Chicago Bulls. Now, yes, you may be looking, and yes, this is old data. Okay, but number one, I like the Bulls, and this is what I grew up watching. These are the people I grew up watching. And number two, it is great for purposes of the box and whisker plot because it has some outliers, which does make it useful to graph in this form. So the maximum and the minimum should be very easy to find. The maximum, largest number, minimum, smallest number. And then the median, which is the middle number, which is the quartile 2, should be pretty easy to follow. So those three things should be easy to find. I highlighted in green the median. The other two things I have not talked about are the third quartile and the first quartile. So right here, this green bar, this green highlight, divides my data in two. And if you think about it, the median's the middle number, so middle is halfway between. So it's literally half of my data. So half of it's up here, and half of it's down here. So to get these other quartiles, all you're doing is finding the middle number of that data. So I have these 5 numbers to look at. So I find the middle number, 841. That is my third quartile. Same thing on the bottom. I've got 5 numbers. I find my middle number, 288. That is my first quartile. So I have my 5-number summary. That's what it's called. You need 5 numbers to make this box and whisker plot. The quartiles all make up the box. And then the maximum and minimum are your whiskers, which are the points. So I come up with a scale. Now I need to start at 167 and go all the way to 2,357. So counting by ones, Counting by twos, no way. So we got to think of interval that will work. So I chose 150 as my interval. So I'm adding 150 each time. Once I have that graph, just that interval, I take this 5-number summary and I just plot it down here. So 167, about, guess where you think it is, 288. So now I'm making a line because these quartiles make a box. So I make a line. My median, my quartile 2, 416, put another line. My third quartile, 841, that's the end of the box. So this right here is my box. That line, this one, and this one are all the quartiles. And then I also have my maximum, which is way over here. So I create the box, and then I connect the box to the whiskers. So now it's asking, what is the range for the data for the Bulls players? Largest minus smallest. So the range of points that were scored in that season was 2,190. That's a pretty big range. What is the interquartile range? Mr. Slover, we never talked about that. I gave you the formula right here. It's quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So that means quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So remember, everything in this box actually is 50% of my data. This box, this entire box is 50% of my data. So 50% of the points scored were between that range. 553 was that range between those players in that box. And that's what this is saying. 50% of that box is half the data. Half the players were in that box, and they scored in a range of 553 points. What percent of players, according to the box plot, scored above 841 points? So that's this line here. Well, that's 25%. And then, was there an outlier? Oh yeah, you bet there was. Look how far this guy is compared to everything else. And that was Michael Jordan. So this one is just, example 3 is just a set of numbers. It's not necessarily related to anything. You can try and relate it to something if you want, but you're creating a box and whisker plot for those numbers. So I put them in order, find my minimum, my maximum. In this case, I don't have a true middle number. So that means I have to add my two middle numbers and divide by 2. That's how I got 47.5 as my median. So once I have my median, I drew my line in here. Here's my middle number, my median right in between the two. I look at these numbers, and I find the middle number from there, and that's my quartile 1. So 37 is the middle number. Now I look on the right side. The middle number of those numbers is 78. That's my third quartile. I have my 5-number summary. I come up with my interval. So I'm counting by 5s. And then I just plot. 22 is a point. 93 is a point because those are my whiskers. And all of these quartiles right in the center, that is all the box. 37, 47 and a half, 78. So once again, this means this box represents 50% of my data. Whatever these numbers are relating to, 50% of that data is between 37 and 78. So the best time to use the box and whisker plot is when you have outliers. Right? The best example is right here. I have Michael Jordan scoring all these points. He is a huge outlier. So the best way to represent this information visually is with a box and whisker plot.